Standardized testing. That's a subject that many people have a strong opinion on. Some believe that it's a fair and accurate way of judging a student's intelligence, while others believe that it's actually not at all and it's a terrible way. It's not objective, it's extremely subjective to test a student's intelligence based on a standardized test. That's what we're discussing on the show today. If we take a step back and look at standardized tests on a whole, there are pros and cons to either side. To highlight those pros and cons, we're joined by Suparnika to my left, who believes that yes, they do accurately test a student's intelligence, and Surbhi to my right, who believes otherwise. Suparnika, we'll start with you. You have 1 minute on the clock. Why do you believe that standardized tests accurately test a student's intelligence?
Right. First, I think it's essential to understand what you mean by intelligence. Now, the very purpose of having a test is to gauge whether that person has the required knowledge, has the required ability to practically use that knowledge within a given time frame. So now this is something that's a skill which is required not only in your academic sphere but also in your job sphere, which I think a standardized test is does very well. I mean, it gauges the intelligence, the practical usage of the information that is required very well, because it gives a common platform to everybody. So there is no subjectivity as to it's a very fair way of evaluating everybody on the same page. Everybody is given the same syllabus, everybody is given the same time frame, and then it all depends upon one variable factor, that is the student's intelligence, the person's intelligence to figure out what those tests and what the outcome of a certain question is.
Okay, valid point. I think before I come to Surbhi, I sort of just define what a standardized test is. It's a test in which all test takers have the same set of questions, they take it in the same environment with the same set of information given to them. Surbhi, she's saying that everything stays the same, the only variable is intelligence. Is that a fair point to make?
I think that's absolutely unfair for reasons. Okay, so this intelligence being a variable works well only if all the other factors are constant. Now, I come and tell you that all these other factors are not constant. There are externalities, and then there is this difference in that input. Yes, the test is standardized, but the way you prepare for the test is not standardized, right? You're given a syllabus, you're given a time frame, true, but the way your teachers teach you, the environment you are in, the kind of school you study in, the kind of parents you have, the kind of friends you have, all that affects your learning abilities, all that affects how you perform in that text. For a very common example, see, probability is based a lot on cards and deck of cards, etc., etc. So in a book of mine, I had this question about poker. Now, I do not know essentially what poker is all about. It had something about high cards, low cards, flush, straight flush. I did not get the question. So if those kind of questions come in, my socio-economic status also interferes with the way I'm taking a test. Therefore, the standardization does not accurately measure your intelligence. Me not being able to answer a poker question because I don't know poker does not establish that I'm stupid. It just establishes that there's something I do not know about, something I have not been taught, and hence the standardization will not work on a testing level.
So, okay, fair enough. We've all got those terrible probability questions with a deck of cards, and if you have never actually played with the deck of cards, you have no idea what that question means. Is that a fair point, that it doesn't accurately test because you might not have the same information? At the end of the day, you might not know.
Exactly. So now herein lies the catch. So when this person does not know what essentially high card, low card in poker means, then it's not as if this information is withheld from that person, and it's not as if there's just one test. If you're appearing for the biggest standardized test, which is your board exam in class 12th, you will not walk into the board exam without any knowledge of poker or playing cards or anything for that matter, because you know that this is something that is like a standard question of a topic called probability. So the teacher will essentially give you this information, and how will she know that you don't know anything about this? So when there are mock standardized tests in your classroom, when the teacher figures out that you haven't attempted the question because you don't know what it essentially is, then she realizes that this is unfair. Therein lies the teacher's role of balancing the information that every student gets. So I understand that it would be unfair to go in without knowing what the question is essentially talking about, like the basic definitions in the question. But you realize that the applicability after realizing the definition of the question is uniform for everybody. And that is the entire purpose of taking the test in the first place. Trying to gauge how that student applies the knowledge. And herein we assume that our system is equipped and our system can give out unbiased and proper information, balanced information to every student.
Okay. Surbhi, your response to that, and also I'll have a follow-up question.
So, see, she mentioned very clearly that standardized, we assume something. Now, that assumption falls because it is not true. Now, that assumption is what I am countering here. You assume that a student knows this much, he or she has been taught this much because there's a teacher in the classroom. But that assumption cannot be tested. Like, what you test is the end result. You do not test what happened, what the means to that end were. So, that is what I'm saying. Now, this standardized testing also inculcates something called teaching to the test. Now, this teacher knows what's coming in the test. She's been teaching students for so many years. Now, there's something called life skills. There's something called being in the outer world that your elders, your teachers tell you. Now, with this test, the teacher knows that the student's life is at stake because something has to be done of this test, and they'll take the results and analyze it. And therefore, I have to teach my students this.
Just
now,
teach them the syllabus.
Yeah,
so
the
that
syllabus.
They can
Now,
take
this
them.
syllabus, this book syllabus, it leaves out opportunities of the greater world, like your teacher talking to you like a normal human being and not a robot, shelling out maths questions and science examples. So now this teacher talking to you will tell you what that teacher went through, whatever anybody went through, and not just what your book asks you to. So this teaching to the test is something that we regret because of that has come due to the standardization of this.
Okay, fair enough. So, Panika, I'll let you respond to that. But Surbhi, there are all those who say that when everyone takes the same test, then a student knows where he stands in a class. Not necessarily competitive-wise, but they sort of know that I'm about halfway through the class, or I'm an average student at such a test. These are the concepts that I need to work on. And then they improve on that, which can only happen through a standardized test. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that a test in a given environment, when you know your peers, when you know your co-test takers, when you know your test giver, and you know that you've been provided the same information, so what that student is learning, I am learning. And now if I don't manage to do well, I lack something. Now here comes a point of native intellect that we are born with. Now this is something that's got to do with the genes. We have no control over. Okay, so the right side, the left side of the brain, which one is more developed, that comes through your chromosomes and stuff, and that is something you don't have control over. Now this also influences testing. Now this environment can be standardized, can be equal only to a certain extent, and therefore this is not a very good way of judging how intelligent a student is.
Okay. So, Panika, she was also talking about how when you take a test, it's sort of the teacher just teaches to the test. This is in the syllabus, this is not in the syllabus, and therefore the student doesn't have the opportunity to think or analyze outside the box.
Right.
What is your response to that?
Okay, so I'd like to tackle this on 2 points. Now, first of all, when you see that there's a test at the end of the year, this gives you an incentive to learn whatever you're supposed to learn. So even this condensation of information, even this, this marking out of this is important and this is not important is somehow helpful, because that student is then able to better focus on what is primarily, important information, which at the end of the day is supposed to be, important while calculating whether this person knows what that person is supposed to know or not, right? And then also then I come and talk to you about this. Okay, so when she talked about this, rote learning and basically just textbook learning,
Yeah.
if a student is inherently curious, I don't think any amount of textbook learning or dull learning can stop that child from going to the school library, taking another textbook, taking another book and opening and learning it. And when it comes to personal interaction with teachers, I mean, I'm pretty sure that not all teachers will just go, this is in the syllabus, this is what I'm about to teach you, after this you can't come and talk to me. I mean, that's not what every teacher would do, right? And we learn a lot outside of school and inside school, not necessarily in the classrooms when we go for co-curricular activities, for other competitions. Now, this builds our intelligence, this builds our perception level, this builds how fast we are able to, react to situations. And now this skill that we learn, we are able to somehow utilized in that standardized test in those 3 hours that we're given a problem. If suppose I get a probability question and I'm not sure of what the question is essentially talking about, what the definition is, I will still be able to perceive the question, think about the question. And I think this is a valid test to gauge whether the student has the cognitive sense to practically come to a solution to a particular question.
Okay. What happens when, if you're saying the standardized test does accurately test a student's intelligence, sometimes when you go on the day of a test, you might have a bad day at home. You might have a rocky start to the morning in which the test doesn't go as well.
Right.
But then does it still make sense to say that that test is an accurate way to test their intelligence? Because
Yes.
external
So-
factors can change with
Yeah.
whatever information
Yeah.
you have or intelligence that you have. Your
Yeah.
test taking ability can be affected.
All right.
So
So now herein lies the very purpose of taking a test. Now you realize that the purpose of taking a CBSE examination, the purpose of taking an IQ test is different. Now in an IQ test, the person who is giving you the test, he or she will make sure that that person is calm, that person is composed, and then go ahead with the questions. However, in a CBSE examination, the purpose is different. The purpose is to gauge whether or not whatever the information that that student has attained over the past year, which is essential higher learning information, whether that person has that information or not. Now, whether or not that person had a bad morning, etc., etc. Now this sort of externality is something that that person will face throughout his or her life, right? Even in your job, I mean, you might just have a rocky start and you might not be able to give your best 100% on the job. So would you conclude the same by saying that no, it was unfair? If that person would have been in a proper frame of mind, that person would have been able to come up with better results. Now you see, because these externalities are same in standardized tests like CBSE examinations and your actual work environment, it's something that you'll have to deal with, right?
Okay.
So now, because these externalities are the same, that the measure of intelligence that the test has come up with is still valid. It
Okay.
is still true.
fair enough. She makes them slightly complicated, but some quite valid points. Sylvie, what is your response? I'll take closing
Yeah.
comments then.
Right. So, I agree with the fact that these externalities, the pressure that we face, the pressure that the test poses on us, makes us, well prepared for what's coming into life, because life isn't fair, right?
Yeah.
Life is never fair. But she also spoke about the things we learn out of school. Now, these things we learn out of school depend upon our family. And now these things we learn out of school also are a measure of our intelligence. Now this is a measure of intelligence. The way I talk to people, the way I'm able to perceive their comments and analyze and then maybe rebut them is a measure of my intelligence. But that is not tested when I'm giving a standardized test. Now in a standardized test, let's say there's some high-end mathematical, complicated differentiation calculus question. Okay, now there are two students. Both of them get the question right. One of them has had no help. One of them has gone through intense tuitions or lots of studies. Now the end result is both of them get it right. But that student who has gone through intense training may or may not be as intelligent as the student who did it on his own. So now this is not measured. Okay. And this being not measured deprives that intelligent student of their opportunity to do something good. Also, these standardized tests, like there are some questions universally answered wrong, some universally answered right. Now, when you rank those students, when you give them marks, you leave out these universal questions. It doesn't matter whether 3 people answered the universally wrong question right. It is left out. Maybe they are intelligent, but you leave them out. It does not matter if some person, by some stroke of luck, answered the universally right question wrong. He or she will be considered stupid because, come on, the sun does not rise in the west. But then the person might have had a bad day, as you said.
Yeah.
So these questions are left out, and therefore this test becomes biased.
Okay.
Not deliberately, but unknowingly
Yeah.
it does become biased.
I think both of you have proved your points in terms of using so many probability examples that if this happens, then this can happen, that it's gotten slightly complicated. So Parnika, closing comments. I think Surbhi's argument was basically that there's no way to know if if all children have the same amount of information. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to think its entire life that it's stupid. So closing comments on, and just sum up your argument for us.
Right. So now the education system that we have today, I'm pretty sure will not ask a fish to climb a tree.
Yeah.
Right. So now a fish will be, not deemed a fish and will be given monkey skills to climb the tree. Right. So now that is the entire purpose of the education system and the the classroom teaching which happens before the standardized test. Now having the standardized test without classroom teaching in isolation would be unfair. But you have to realize that the standardized test is backed by a system which is responsible and which does its duty properly to give out fair information and equal information to everybody. And the standardized test therein, gauges how well a person can practically use that knowledge,
whatever knowledge they have, and take the test. Surbhi, your comments, do you agree with her slightly?
Yes. So obviously the institution that has come up with the standardized test has a mandate to do something so that students get the information. But see, we cannot live in denial of the problem that this is not the case. We have different factors. We have disparities of social status, economic status, wealth, income, and intelligence that is inherent in our genes. So now, because of this disparity, the standardized test being a way to measure someone's intelligence does not appeal to me. Frankly, does not appeal to me. And yes, the institution, so standardized test can be a very good thing to measure intelligence, provided the institution does everything, which it is not doing in the present scenario. So provided that they equip their teachers with the same standardized skills, provided that they tell the families what they need to teach their children, provided that they ensure the same household, provided that they ensure the same market, the same outside world for the students to interact to, which is not possible, and hence standardized tests do not stand.
Okay, thank you ladies. Slightly complicated debate, but fair points on both sides. I think all of us don't like tests, but whether they test our intelligence or not is something that is very hotly debated. Thank you very much. That's a wrap on the debate, and we're going to slip into a short break, but don't go away because we have lots more on the other side.